Hello everyone, welcome back. So I do want to bring up something real quick. I think when I did the review for Holding Out on the last episode, I kind of fangirled a little too hard and I ended up giving more spoilers for the story than I originally intended. I don't actually plan to give you lots of spoilers on anything. My intent is always to give you a synopsis, maybe a few plot points that would pique your interest or be triggering for some, and then give you my viewpoints on pros and cons and characters and things to give you an idea if it's a story that you would actually want to read. I don't intend to spoil the entire story for you. So moving forward, I will be trying to keep any references to the story vague and try and keep it to a few specific plot points. That being said, there is still a lot in Holding Out that I did not bring up, that I did not reference. So don't hold it against the story that I overshared a little bit. There's still a lot in there for you. So if you're still interested in reading it, definitely go read it. That being said, let's move on with this video's review, which is Climbing Out, which is the second story in the Hawks MC series by Lila Rose. This is the story of Deanna Drake and Grady Daniels, or Grizz as he's known amongst his biker buddies. Trigger warnings for this story include gratuitous profanity. It is around Deanna, who has been nicknamed as Hellmouth. Explicitly sexual scenes, references to rape, references to prostitution, violence. There are a couple death scenes in the story. So if any of those are things that are triggering for you, then you may want to consider that before reading the story. That being said, as I did say before, and I will continue to say, it is handled very well. It is handled very respectfully, pertaining to the story and how it affects characters. So it's not a blatant in your face just to be grating. It is there as part of the story. It starts off where it's been a few months since Zara's troubles from the last story, and Zara and Julian have come to check on Deanna because she hasn't really been around much and she hasn't really been contacting anybody very much, which is very odd for her, and they're very worried about her. They get there and she's purchased a bunch of stuff that she's just storing around the house for no apparent reason. And it doesn't make any sort of sense. And it gets to the point where Zara has to call her husband to come help and get answers, who of course brings Grizz. Now Grizz and Deanna met in the last story, and there is a mutual attraction right from the very beginning. However, there is also a bit of an age gap, because while Deanna is in her mid-20s, Grizz is in his early 40s. So he's a little trepidatious at the idea of forming any sort of a relationship with a woman so much younger than he is. But by the same token, he is attracted to her, and she is the best friend of his Prez's wife, so he wants to be sure that she is protected as much as possible. And he does care about her already, you know. It's just because you don't know if you want to be with somebody doesn't mean you don't care about them. So eventually it comes out that there is a man from Deanna's past who was very violent and sexually exploitative in Diana's life. Something occurred that ended up with him going to prison, and now it seems he may be getting out, and when he does, he seems to be planning to come for Deanna. So, of course, now the men of the MC have to kind of rally around her to protect her, which really chafes her quite a bit because she's always considered herself to be something of a badass. And now she's in a position where she can't act like a badass, and it kind of annoys her, but she's also scared, which she doesn't know how to handle. And basically it is decided that Grizz is going to come stay with her at her house. And he's also bringing along his 2-year-old daughter that Deanna never knew he had. And he now has with him full time, essentially. So here we have Grizz and Deanna stuck in a house together. There's a huge attraction between them. Deanna has made it very clear she is very open to being with him, at least on a temporary level, if not permanently. Grizz is the one who is, as I've already said, he's reticent about starting anything with her because of the age difference. And now he has his 2-year-old daughter with him. And Deanna has to adjust to a child being in the house because, again, her nickname is Hellmouth, and she has to try to correct her language around this small child. So needless to say, there's a lot of really interesting play between Grizz and Deanna. There's a lot of really great scenes between Deanna and Swan, who is Grady's daughter. There's, of course, lots of interplay between Deanna and Zara and Julian and Maddie and all of the characters we've already met in previous books. And the really nice thing that I love about Lila Rose's writing is that you do get lots of exposition for future stories, but it's not so blatant that it's clear which will be the next story. And it also makes the cohesion of the world that the characters live in more realistic. It's not like, oh, here's a blatant plug for the next book. It's like, so yeah, these people, you know, she has a crush on him, but he's a womanizer, and this guy over here, he does this. But because they're characters that are intertwined with the characters of the story, they've been intertwined from previous story and are obviously going to remain intertwined because they're all part of the same group. It's not blatant, in your face, and kind of annoying. It's just natural, cohesive, and you're like, oh, so here's how life is developing, which is really what you want when you're reading a continuing series, I think. Again, this is me fangirling here. So, as for character development, Grady has to get over the fact that there's the age difference. He has to get over any issues that have occurred between he and the mother of his child. He has to come to terms with the fact that he does care about Deanna and he actually wants to be with her. And how to move forward with that now that her life is in danger. How to move forward and get over the fact that she had been so traumatized and abused by this guy who did these things to her. So there's a lot of character development there. And then there's Deanna, who I feel really had the most character development because, again, she's always fancied herself something of a badass. She is in a position where she can't be the badass. She has to let others step up for her, so to speak, against someone that she obviously is very scared of. She is in a position where she has to, again, moderate herself in front of a young child because she actually feels like she wants to. In the previous story, she was constantly having to be reminded, you know, watch your language in front of the kids, watch your language in front of the kids, and that whenever there are kids in the room that are not Grady's daughter, she still has to be reminded pretty frequently. But she feels a natural inclination to try and censor herself for Swan, which is something she doesn't quite understand. And she never thought she would ever want kids. And so here she is, completely confused by her feelings of maternal affection for this little girl. And she comes into her true strength, not a projected strength, but her true strength as a person. You also get a hint of how genuinely kind she is. Yes, she's a badass. Yes, she uses a lot of bad language, but she is a good person at heart, and there is a character that kind of pops up and she'll come up in other stories, but when Deanna is thinking to herself about this person and their circumstances in life, you're like, okay, Deanna's actually a really good person. Like, you know she's a good person because she helped Zara out in her story, and she was there for her. But you really kind of get an idea of, she seems to want to stick up for those who are unable or feel unable to stick up for themselves, which is something I really like about her. She's relatable, but she's like the badass friend who is there for everybody, but she also likes to annoy everybody. And of course, Julian and Maddie are there. Zara's parents are there, some more than others. And you really get a really fun, interesting family dynamic between all of these people in the club. And it's just really well done, in my opinion. Now, that's saying a lot because it's not really my favorite story out of the series. Out of the first 4 books, well, 4.5 books, because there is a novella in there as well. But out of the first books, it's my least favorite. I come back to it the least, but it is still very well done. I don't really have too many negatives about it. And for some reason I'm spacing on any of the ones that I do have, so I'm sorry about that. Very well done story, thoroughly enjoy it. I think most women would probably enjoy at least one of the stories from this series. I said it before and I'm going to say it again. I'm going to be fangirling out throughout this series, and there's another series where this will probably be a problem as well in the future. But there's just something about Lila Rose's writing that I thoroughly enjoy. And it's one of the ones that, like I've said in the previous review, I will probably recommend this to most people because it seems to have a really good balance between different elements of the story, between the action, between the violence, between the character development, between how they all interplay with each other, and then the romance on top of that. It's a good balance, I think. Is there any negatives that I see in the story? There is a point that I wasn't too terribly fond of where Grizz felt that Deanna had overstepped her boundaries pertaining to Swan, and he kind of overreacted, in my opinion. But by the same token, it is technically his daughter, and he is protective of her, given some of the drama that has happened between he and his daughter's mom. So I can understand it. I don't have to be a fan of it, but I can understand it. And that's the thing, is they're very human characters. Nobody is on a pedestal, so to speak. Nobody is so perfect that they are unrelatable. You may not relate with a character as much as you do with another character, but they're still relatable in a way. And that's the way of life. And that's, I guess you could say that's one of the reasons I like these stories as well, is they're very relatable, and then you add the humor to it, and it makes it thoroughly enjoyable. So I think I'm going to be done fangirling on Lila Rose for now. It's going to pop up a lot this month because the whole month is going to be dedicated to the Hawks MC. So I hope you enjoyed this review. I hope it was helpful without being too overly informative. Let me know in the comments down below if you like this format better than the way I did it before. And again, if I spoiled anything too much for the last story for you, then I'm genuinely sorry. But I promise you, there's a lot in there that I did not say. I didn't spoil everything, I promise. So that being said, I'll see you all at the next review. I look forward to seeing you and talking to you later. You have a great day. Bye-bye.